Brigitte Bardot isn't just a name, it's a living storm of glamour, rebellion, heartbreak, and controversy. To some, she's the ultimate French film icon, the daring face of 1950s and 60s European cinema. To others, she's an inflammatory figure whose later opinions cast shadows over her earlier achievements. And to everyone else, she remains a paradox, the beautiful sex kitten who soared to stardom, then spent much of her life clawing her way out of the cages of fame, social mores, and her own tumultuous emotions. A whirlwind journey through strict religious upbringing, risque photo shoots, roller coaster marriages, shocking breakups, mental collapse, audacious comebacks, and the unwavering activism that redefined her as something far beyond a movie star. Born on September 28, 1934, Brigitte Bardot came into this world in Paris, France, under circumstances as polished and privileged as they come. Her father, Louis Bardot, was a wealthy engineer who had carved out an elite position for his family, while her mother, Anne-Marie Moussel, was equally well off, hailing from a devoutly Catholic background. Imagine a young Brigitte ambling through a splendid Parisian home where religious icons decorated walls and where from dawn to dusk she was expected to conduct herself with proper manners that fit her family's conservative ideals. To outsiders, it might have seemed like an idyllic environment, a dream world of tinkling silverware and hushed traditions. For Bardot, though, it felt suffocating. From an early age, she was restless in that gilded cage. That claustrophobia came to a head early. Brigitte and her younger sister once accidentally broke a precious vase. There's a childlike heartbreak you might expect, tears, apologies, maybe forced chores as punishment. But not in the Bardot household. Louis Bardot lashed out at his daughters, whipping them both in a rage. That moment wasn't just about physical pain. For Brigitte, it became an emotional scar. She harbored a growing resentment toward her parents, feeling that her father's disciplinarian approach shattered any hope of a warm and open relationship. The strict etiquette and religious dogma that governed the household only magnified her sense of being trapped under a microscope, with minimal freedom to simply be a young girl. But something miraculous happened in her early childhood. She discovered dance. By the age of 5, she was tiptoeing around practicing ballet moves with a fervor that hinted at more than just a passing fancy. That love for ballet was her first taste of independence, her first inkling that there was a bigger, more artistic world beyond her parents' stifling rulebook. Even when World War II shook France, forcing families into new forms of daily struggle, rationing, fear, disruptions of normal routines, Brigitte found a haven in practicing her dance steps at home, spinning her imagination away from the terrors that lurked outside. She was good, really good, and her mother took notice. Desperate to refine that raw talent, she enrolled Brigitte at the Conservatoire de Paris, a prestigious institution for ballet, around her early teens. It was a chance to indulge a genuine passion, a route that might even lead to becoming a professional ballerina. Each day, Bardot labored in rigorous dance classes, her body and spirit strengthening in the discipline of classical ballet. Here she was, chasing the swirl of music and movement, forging her own identity. In 1949, a stroke of serendipity launched Bardot down a path that had nothing to do with pirouettes. Hélène Gordon-Lazareff, the director of Elle magazine, spotted Brigitte and quickly realized that the teenager's fresh-faced beauty held magnetic promise. Through a modeling opportunity, Bardot found herself with a new kind of spotlight shining on her. No longer was she just a budding ballet dancer. She was a camera's dream. And at 15, she graced the cover of Elle, exuding that youthful poise that would become so iconic in later years. Cover shoots might seem glamorous, but they come with an underbelly of pressure and expectation, especially for a devoutly Catholic upper-class family. Suddenly, sophisticated strangers in the fashion and film industries were taking note. She was a radiant puzzle, refined yet rebellious, demure yet intense. That contradictory spark only inflamed the interest of producers, directors, and magazine editors. Soon, Bardot received an invitation to audition for a film called Les Lauriers sont coupés. She didn't land the part, but on that day, she met Roger Vadim, an apprentice in the film business who would rewrite her life story in more ways than one. Vadim recognized Bardot's remarkable potential, and let's not pretend it was purely professional. He was smitten with her beauty and that glimmer of defiance behind her eyes. As if this blossoming connection weren't enough to fuel drama, Bardot's father detested the idea of his teenage daughter romancing a film apprentice. In an attempt to save her from scandal, he shipped her off to England for schooling, ripping her away from Vadim. Devastated, Bardot, just a teenager, sunk into despair, culminating in a desperate act. She attempted suicide by placing her head in a lit oven. It was a chilling testament to how swiftly youthful passion can lead to dark corners when constrained by overbearing guardians. Alarmed, her parents conceded to her plea to keep seeing Vadim, but only if she abided by strict rules, including no marriage until she turned 18. Then came 1952, the year Bardot made her film debut in Crazy for Love. It was a minor role, but every on-screen moment underscored her star quality. She possessed an effortless aura that turned heads, even if producers weren't yet sure how to cast her. That same year, Bardot appeared in Manina, The Girl in the Bikini, a film that placed her in skimpy swimwear for much of the runtime. The French public was scandalized. Here was a young actress, practically a child by societal standards, flaunting an unabashed sensuality that upended conservative expectations. She was either shocking or exhilarating, depending on who you asked. For Bardot, it was just a job. She never asked to be the nation's hot topic headline, but it was happening anyway. On her 18th birthday, she decided she was through letting her parents dictate her love life. She married Roger Vadim, that film apprentice who had become her personal champion and would soon be her professional one too. Her parents, no doubt furious, could only watch as Bardot set out on a course that would mark the end of her ingenue phase. Vadim sensed that the public's appetite for Bardot's rebellious sexuality could catapult her to the A-list. He wasn't wrong. By 1956, Vadim cast her in his own film creation, and God Created Woman. The film was electric, a manifesto for female sensuality, independence, and unapologetic desire, all wrapped in scandal. Bardot's character defied the demure stereotypes of traditional French cinema. She was a free spirit, fully aware of her sexual power and unafraid to flaunt it. As you might guess, the moral guardians of the era went ballistic, with Catholic groups calling the film immoral and clamoring for bans. But controversy sells, and global audiences lined up to witness the so-called forbidden fruit. Practically overnight, Bardot emerged as Europe's biggest star and an international sex symbol. Her face and figure graced magazines worldwide, prompting fervent debate. Was this youthful bombshell emblematic of new freedoms, or was she simply fueling the moral decline of Western society? Bardot, at the center of it all, likely viewed it with a mix of giddy astonishment and creeping dread. During the filming of And God Created Woman, Bardot fell into an affair with her co-star Jean-Louis Trintignant. The tension between on-screen chemistry and off-screen scandal was too intense to hide. Bardot's marriage to Vadim disintegrated under the weight of real betrayal and the glare of paparazzi flashbulbs. By 1958, Bardot was unraveling emotionally. She had soared to global fame, only to tumble into heartbreak, a pattern that would repeat itself in the years to come. Her affair with Trintignant fizzled, as did a later fling with the musician Gilbert Bécaud. In the swirl of lovers and heartbreak, the paparazzi never relented. They followed Bardot's every move, capturing her breakdowns, tears, and forced smiles. Freedom started feeling like a prison. She was lonely, depressed, and tormented by the same media that had propelled her to stardom. By 1959, Trintignant was gone for good, and Bardot was an emotional wreck. Worn thin by tabloids, casting her as a man-eating vixen, while ignoring the fragility beneath that glamorous exterior. But 1959 also brought a surprising new player onto the stage, Jacques Charrier, Bardot's co-star in Babette Goes to War. Charrier hailed from a more conventional background, which momentarily appeased Bardot's father, eager for his daughter to find some respectable anchor. Bardot and Charrier embarked on a whirlwind romance that led to marriage within the same year. Her father, relieved, likely considered this a moment of redemption for his scandal-plagued daughter. Then real life cracked the fairy tale. Bardot discovered she was pregnant. She was uncertain about motherhood. Did she even want a child? Charrier was elated, though, pressing her to see it through. In 1960, Bardot gave birth to a son, Nicolas. The public might have imagined a luminous maternal glow, transforming Bardot from temptress to contented mother, but the reality was starker. She felt stifled, unhappy, and resentful. Fame was already suffocating her, and now she was tethered by domestic obligations that she'd never yearned for. She lacked a maternal instinct, she later admitted, and she was drowning in the scrutiny that labeled her a rebellious wife and mother. Her discontent grew while Charrier served in the army, leaving her isolated. The cracks widened. By 1962, Bardot had walked away from Charrier and from her toddler son, divorcing, relinquishing custody of Nicholas, and returning to the unpredictable paparazzi-filled life she knew. Public condemnation was swift. Imagine the scorn. This glamorous star who'd just abandoned a child. Bardot's mental health deteriorated further. Paparazzi harassment escalated. She was in many ways on the brink. Still, her career soldiered on. In 1965, she starred in Viva Maria, alongside Jeanne Moreau. The on-set rivalry between these two icons spurred Bardot to deliver a spirited performance. But promotions took her to places like New York, where she found the unrelenting spotlight even more overwhelming. It was as if her stardom had built her a golden cage. Wherever she traveled, the cage followed. By 1966, Bardot found yet another dramatic romance, Günther Sachs, a millionaire playboy famed for grand gestures. The story goes that he showered her villa with rose petals dropped from a helicopter in a flamboyant display of affection. Bardot, charmed, married him after barely a month. Their marriage was a swirl of high society parties and flashy extravagances. Yet it too crumbled, culminating in a 1969 divorce. Bardot's restlessness and dissatisfaction seemed endless, her relationships flaring up in bright, short-lived bursts. As the 1970s arrived, Bardot's star power felt threatened by a new wave of younger, bolder actresses. The roles that had once made her a provocative darling were overshadowed by even edgier films. With shifting tastes in the movie-going public, Bardot grew cynical about the industry. Instead of hustling to keep up with younger starlets, she turned introspective. She had enough heartbreak, paparazzi madness, and moral condemnation for 2 lifetimes. In 1973, at the age of 39, Bardot dropped a bombshell. She was retiring from film. Many thought it was a dramatic tantrum, but she was done. She had no interest in chasing the next big part or battling for a relevancy that had cost her so much. Critics and fans were stunned. She was still box office gold, but Bardot was walking away. Retirement, however, did not guarantee peace. 10 years later, on her 49th birthday in 1983, Bardot attempted suicide again, this time by overdosing on a mix of tranquilizers and wine. Rushed to the hospital for a stomach pumping, she barely survived. Around that same period, she quietly fought breast cancer, choosing to keep her diagnosis private. This was Brigitte Bardot in her 50s, living reclusively, grappling with health issues, near constant depression, and a sense of displacement. Hollywood was behind her, but her personal battles raged on. Seeking a deeper sense of purpose, Bardot threw herself into animal rights activism in the mid-'80s. She launched the Brigitte Bardot Foundation, throwing considerable funds at global animal welfare causes. This dedication would eventually stand as one of her life's defining pillars. No matter how the press portrayed her relationships or her political slip-ups, Bardot became a lioness for animal protection, railing against cruelty in circuses, laboratories, fur farms, and anywhere else she perceived injustice toward animals. In a world that had objectified her for so long, Bardot found a mission that gave her renewed clarity. But time had not mellowed her storms entirely. In her 50s, Bardot published a memoir that ignited an inferno of scandal. She unleashed a torrent of bitterness toward her past relationships, particularly targeting ex-husband Jacques Charrier and their son Nicolas, whom she portrayed in shockingly cruel terms. The media devoured every word, outraged by her unapologetically acidic perspective. Furious, Charrier sued Bardot for defamation, demanding £1 million in damages. Courts found some merit in his claim, but only ordered Bardot to pay around £28,000. Regardless, the damage was done. Bardot's revelations about motherhood pushed her even further from any possible reconciliation with Nicolas. While some saw her candor as tragic honesty, many perceived it as a final nail in the coffin of her family ties. In a surprising twist, Charrier wrote his own book titled My Response to Brigitte Bardot, claiming he wanted to rehabilitate her image by sharing personal letters that revealed moments of maternal love she'd once shown. One can only imagine the swirl of emotions and motivations behind that. Was it a father seeking to offer a balanced truth for his son? Or a wounded ex trying to prove Bardot's statements false? Either way, the scandal overshadowed attempts at healing. Bardot faced legal consequences for repeated hate speech, further tarnishing her legacy. Some supporters tried to defend her as an elderly woman set in her ways. Others said she was simply giving voice to sentiments she'd harbored all along, now emboldened by the isolation that had shielded her from mainstream accountability. Today, Brigitte Bardot stands as a polarizing figure in the cultural memory. On one hand, her groundbreaking roles in God Created Woman and a string of 50s and 60s classics remain crucial to film history. She helped liberate European cinema from the constraints of prudishness, showing that women could take command of their sexual identities on screen. She was an emblem of the French New Wave, fueling fantasies, rewriting cinematic norms, and setting the stage for a new kind of actress who could be as wild as any man. She also pioneered a form of public image that combined naive charm with brazen rebellion, an archetype that influenced later sex symbols, from Marilyn Monroe to modern starlets. Her legacy shaped fashion too. Bardot's messy blonde hair, cat-eye makeup, and carefree style remain iconic decades later. Even the Bardot neckline, a wide-open boat neck that shows off both shoulders, bears her name. Yet that same woman also walked away from Hollywood in disgust, harbored deep resentments toward motherhood, and made vile remarks about immigrants and religious minorities. Her crusade for animals, while undeniably important, often clashed with her hateful rhetoric against entire human communities. The latter chapters of her life seem a tragic departure from the star who once championed personal freedom and expression. The lines between rebelliousness and hostility grew blurred, leaving fans and critics to wrestle with how to reconcile the luminous actress from the 50s and 60s with the reclusive, combative figure of the present. From that devout Catholic upbringing and the heartbreak of paternal cruelty, to the dawn of her film career in bikini-clad Scandal, to the relentless parade of lovers, husbands, heartbreaks, and near breakdowns, Bardot's narrative stands among the wildest in showbiz lore. She soared like a meteor, shining bright and terrifying those who cling to tradition, only to crash land in a wreck of heartbreak, isolation, and unrestrained opinions about the modern world. Love her, despise her, or remain fascinated by her, Brigitte Bardot's name won't soon be forgotten. And that might be her ultimate triumph, to have brandished her individuality so fiercely that she earned a place in history as more than just a pretty face. She became an eternal puzzle, one as likely to provoke as to inspire, a symbol of uncurbed self-expression and the dangerous potential that rides along with it. So yes, with great beauty often comes great controversy. And in Bardot's case, that controversy is a typhoon that shaped her world, battered everyone around her, and still resonates through cultural discourse today. She's a star who willingly stepped out of the spotlight on her own terms, then found new ways to command attention from the edges, shooting arrows of scorn and sincerity in equal measure. Whether you see her as a tragic figure consumed by cynicism or a fearless icon unafraid to speak her mind, her life remains a searing narrative of rebellion against every structure that tried to contain her. Bardot will forever be Bardot, a mesmerizing portrait of how the lines between free spirit, rebellious pioneer, and destructive force can blur until you can't see where one ends and another begins.